I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast from my head to your ears. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about summer blockbusters of the 1970s and 80s. Traditionally, Hollywood releases big films during the summer season. These are films that will get people in the seats for the summer months. Kids are out of school, it's usually popcorn films, exciting films, films that you can take the whole family to see, so on and so forth. And I'm going to talk about some of the best movies I can remember from the 70s and 80s that we all still watch to this day. So I'm going to take a break and I will begin my discussion, and I'll be right back. I have to begin my discussion of summer blockbusters with the first summer blockbuster. That would be 1975's Jaws. The summer of 75 saw the release of that movie, and everybody was going to see it, and everybody was scared to get in the water. It was a huge phenomenon. Everybody's talking about it. I remember seeing it on magazine covers and everything. It started the whole tradition of summer blockbusters, and it was Steven Spielberg's first success, and it's a great movie. I watch it every 4th of July. It's set around the 4th of July holiday. That's why I chose it to be a 4th of July tradition for me. Most people are out watching fireworks. I'm watching Jaws. That started because I worked midnight shifts and I couldn't go out and enjoy anything. So I would always come home and watch Jaws. And try to eat a picnic meal, hot dogs and stuff. But Jaws is a great, great movie. You can't beat it. It's a classic, and it just holds up to this day. And it's still thrilling. And, of course, for video release, they've restored it. And the 4K prints are just amazing looking. It looks like a brand new movie. And it's hard to believe that movie will be 50 years old in 2 years. I can't believe that was that long ago, but it is getting there. So for the last 50 years, over half a century, you can thank Jaws for all the great summer blockbusters, because that was the granddaddy of them. 1976 saw The Omen, which is another great film. Of course, Gregory Peck, you can't go wrong. But I didn't see this movie till years later, and I watched it at Halloween. Actually, last Halloween, I watch it, but I didn't really get into it. But last Halloween, I really, really watched it without distraction, and it's really a good film. And it also has a lot of great actors in it. Lee Remick plays his wife, and Patrick Troughton, who was the second Doctor Who, in the 60s, plays a priest, and Jack Palance's daughter plays the maid who hangs herself, I believe. I'd have to look that up for sure. I may be wrong about that, and forgive me if I am. But the movie's great. If you've never seen The Omen, the original Omen, there's a remake. I'm not touching remakes. There was no need to remake that movie. None zilch. I hate remakes. I think that's pointless and stupid. Another film, the 1979 blockbuster, was The Amityville Horror. Again, great movie. No need to remake it. The original stands on its own, and it's creepy. Margot Kidder and James Brolin, favorite of mine. I remember wanting to go see that too and not getting to. It was really annoying. I didn't really get to go see movies in the 70s because my parents didn't really allow it. I was too young. But with cable television coming in and Showtime was the pay channel we got around here. I got to see a lot of these movies. And there's a story behind Showtime. I'm not going to tell it right now. My friend Craig knows it. But I saw a lot of good movies. And there was a home theater network channel we got on at 7 o'clock at night that we weren't supposed to get on our cable system. And I got to watch a lot of good movies there, too. I'll talk about one I saw on that for the first time later. But I really love Jaws. And actually, Amityville Horror and The Omen, they're all great films to this day. But 1977 was the year Star Wars was released that summer, and that became a phenomenon like nobody ever saw before in Hollywood. As you know, Star Wars is still famous to this day, but it was released in 1977. It made stars out of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford. And there's nothing like it, really. And here's a little funny thing about me. I didn't like it. I didn't want to go see it. I didn't like the hype. I never like hype. Jaws was a new thing. Hollywood didn't quite know what they had, and they didn't know what to do with it. So it didn't bother me. But when Star Wars came out, immediately after the success, they were doing the toys, and everybody was talking about it nonstop. But my favorite science fiction show was Star Trek, and I thought it was overshadowing Star Trek. So it was a little bit of a jealous Trekkie there, Trekker. We don't like the term Trekkie, actually. It seems negative. We go by Trekkers. I could do a whole podcast on that too. I might someday. But that's true. But I didn't like it because of my love for Star Trek. But the success of Star Wars led to Paramount Pictures' decision to release Star Trek as a film. So I really can't. I have that to thank for my Star Trek movies. And I'll talk about one of those later, too, in this podcast. But Star Wars was just a mega phenomenon. My nephews love this movie, and that's their favorite. And my friends loved it, but I was like a hold off. I finally saw it in a re-release a few years later, and I love the movie. I love the movie to this day. And it was much more enjoyable to me to watch the movie when it wasn't so forced down my throat. And that happened to me again a few years later, which I'll talk about in another segment in this podcast. But yeah, I don't like hype, but that was the first really, really hyped movie. And it grew. They didn't know it was going to be huge. It just became huge. So it started a whole new trend of marketing and all that stuff too, as well. That whole trend of getting butts in the theater with summer blockbusters started with those movies. And so you have those to thank, Mr. Spielberg, Mr. Lucas, so on and so forth. So I'm going to take a break here, and I'll come back and talk about some more movies, and I'll be right back. And I'm back, and I skipped the blockbuster of 1978 for a reason, and I'm going to talk about that at length because it's my all-time favorite movie, and I'm not going to tell you what that is just at the moment. I will let you know. If you know me, you know what it is. But I'm going to skip over to the 1980s, and 1981 saw the teaming of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg with Indiana Jones, and that was massive, a great film. Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. exciting. Again, their salute to the serials of the 1930s and 40s, and it worked, and it's a classic and a great movie. And that one didn't bug me. It was hyped, maybe somewhat, but not overhyped. It was the film to see that year. Again, released in the summertime. You can't beat Indiana Jones. Love that movie. And that brings me to the wonderful, crazy summer of 1982. And that year was amazing. I mean, it was just one after the other of films that we all are watching to this day. And of course, the movie I waited on all year in 1982, I was writing the logo on my notebooks in high school, and it started with a different name. Of course, I'm talking about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. That came out in the summer of 82. It was not the biggest movie of 1982. Oh no, it was far outshadowed by another movie that I will talk about in a minute that features an alien as well. But I'm going to talk about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan first. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was originally called Star Trek II: The Vengeance of Khan, but I think it was something about the movie, the Star Wars sequel, Revenge of the Jedi, that they thought people were going to get confused or something. I'm not sure about that, but so they retitled the movie Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I had wrote all over my notebooks Star Trek II: The Vengeance of Khan, which I really kind of like that title better, but wrath is such a stronger word, I suppose. But The Vengeance of Khan, I thought that was a great title. I remember seeing the first movie poster and being so excited. It looked awesome, and they promised that it was going to be a more action-packed movie than Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Star Trek: The Motion Picture gets a kind of a bad rep for being boring, blah, 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 but I really liked it. Plus, that was the first time I got to go see a movie in the theaters in 1979. And so that remains a great memory, but it wasn't in the summer. That was a Christmas release. But Star Trek II was the first Star Trek film released in the summer, and I was there on opening night for that one. And I saw Star Trek II for the first time at Tuller Cinema in Benton, Illinois. And the movie opens up with the entire crew getting killed at the beginning. And of course, the big question was, does Spock die in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? And indeed, he did die in Star Trek II. And it was a big deal that summer. And actually, critics raved about Star Trek II. It began that movie phenomenon. Many Star Trek films followed, but Star Trek II is a fan favorite. It's the critics' favorite, and it's a classic. You cannot beat the performance of Ricardo Montalban as Khan, and Shatner's acting was spot on. He has a reputation of scene chewing, but I thought his performance in Star Trek II was kind of subdued, and it was one of his best performances ever. And Ricardo as Khan, he just ate that up. He loved it. And we were so used to seeing Ricardo Montalban as Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island, and here he is in the car commercials with the fine Corinthian leather. Here he is being a supervillain with his chest sticking out, and the mullet and all that stuff. Of course, it was a sequel to the Star Trek episode for the original series, Space Seed. And Harv Bennett looked through all the Star Trek episodes, and he kept going back to that one and decided to make a sequel to that story. And what a great idea that was, and it worked really well. And if you've never seen Star Trek II, watch it. It's one of the best original Star Trek moments ever. The summer of '82, though, was crazy, and around the same time they released Poltergeist, which is another one of my favorite movies. I think the summer of '82 was a magical year for me. I didn't get to see that one at the theater. Matter of fact, I didn't really go to the theater a lot that year, but I saw a lot of movies later on cable. But Poltergeist was a big, huge hit out of the bat. And it was Star Trek's competition. It was a PG-rated horror film, which is kind of weird. A lot of critics were very upset that they gave it a PG rating because it features scenes that are disturbing to children. That clown doll coming to life scared a lot of kids, and the fact is, it's a movie about kids being scared of a poltergeist. So little Carol Ann and all that stuff. But it's a great movie, and it's also it's got a good message. Steven Spielberg was spot on with that movie. That was another Spielberg movie. But his greatest success came with the movie E.T. Of course, y'all know that one. That was 82 was the year of E.T. There was no doubt about it. That was the most hyped movie I had ever seen in my life, and I hated it. I did not want to see that movie. I was just like, I hate having stuff shoved down my throat, and they just talked about that all the time. It was just like, E.T., E.T., E.T. And I'm like, Star Trek 2 is a better movie. I don't want to see E.T. I refuse to see E.T. I don't want to see. I hate E.T. So a few years later, when they released it on home video, I bought a copy because secretly I really wanted to see it. I just didn't like the hype. Again, like Star Wars. So I watched the movie and I cried and I loved it. It's really a great film. I just bought a copy in a still case. I love that movie. But I originally would not see it because of the hype. Don't like hype. Don't like it, never did, never will. But, the summer of '82 also saw the sequel to Grease 2, which has become a cult favorite for a lot of people. It had Michelle Pfeiffer as actually, she was more like the Danny character, the John Travolta character in Grease, the original. But Michelle Pfeiffer played the pretty girl. She was the Olivia Newton-John of Grease 2. It is okay. The music is kind of silly. The dancing is kind of great, but it had a lot of the same people. My friend Eddie Deason was in it as Eugene, and the wonderful Dee Dee Khan is in it, and it had Eve Arden and Donnie Goodman still plugging along. I think Sid Caesar also was Coach Calhoun still in the movie. Plus, they added Connie Stevens and Tab Hunter and roles. So, yeah, Grease 2, it's watchable if you ever see it. But it came out in the summer of '82. 82 that was just a great year. That summer was, if you wanted to go see movies, there was a great movie released every time you turned around. I'm going to take a break and I'll talk about some more movies that were released in the summertime. I'll be right back. And I'm back, and I'm going to talk about the summer of 1984, which started out with 16 Candles, a John Hughes film. Great summer movie. Teen romance, Molly Ringwald, the darling of the 80s films of John Hughes movies. Love 16 Candles. Again, didn't get to see it in the theater, saw it later on cable. One of my all-time favorites, Michael Anthony Hall plays the nerd, and Molly Ringwald's in it, and it's just a fun little lighthearted teen romp that was a lot of fun. But the summer of 1984 belonged to Ghostbusters, which is a great movie. Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Annie Potts is in it. I love this movie. Bill Murray. A lot of fun, combines horror and comedy, and was just a great summer film that year. Plus, you had the theme song by Ray Parker Jr., Ghostbusters theme, which is still a classic, and it's played a lot of times at Halloween. That brings me to the subject of summer movie soundtracks, which that one was a big success, that theme song. That was a great marketing tool of the 80s. Basically, there was always soundtracks. Grease had a soundtrack, blah, blah, blah. But for the 80s, they would get a lot of different stars and make it a soundtrack album and have different songs from different singers and groups. And that was very much a success of the 80s and 90s. Became a great marketing tool. And it wasn't annoying at all. It really wasn't. Films like Ghostbusters, Flashdance, Back to the Future had the great Huey Lewis song. And that's another great summer movie, Back to the Future. That was 85, I believe. Fantastic movie. Christopher Lloyd. Great movie. I'm kind of skipping all over the place with this subject, but again, they benefited by their soundtracks, and it was a great marketing tool that was not annoying. So these movies were word of mouth and a lot of fun. They were hyped somewhat with products and things, but they weren't like in your face about it. Top Gun, I think, was that 1986? Not one of my favorites. I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan, I'll be honest with you. But I have a lot of friends that love Top Gun. And yeah, my dad would have liked that movie, but that's not my thing. Sorry. I hope not to offend anybody by that, but it's not. I just don't like Tom Cruise. So he ruins a movie for me. I just never cared for him. I think he's a fake and a phony, and I never wish I would have laid eyes on him. Quoting another movie that I will be talking about later. The 80s was just a lot of great movies in the summertime. The summer blockbuster thing was just a big old thing in the 80s. By that time, it was at fever pitch, and Hollywood was just knocking out one great movie after another. And they were a lot of times sequels. People would joke because that's when the big sequels would come out. But it was just a wonderful time to be a moviegoer back then. And I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to talk about the summer of 1978, and I'm going to talk about my all-time favorite movie and what bugs me about my all-time favorite movie. So I'll be right back, and thanks for listening, by the way. Am I rambling? What else is new? I'll be right back. I probably will do a sequel to this podcast talking about movies. Maybe do at the Christmas time movie season, which was the next big blockbuster time for Hollywood, the holiday season. But my favorite summertime was the summer of 1978. And I have so many movies from that year that are my favorites. The year in general, that was the year that Halloween debuted. But the summer of 78 was, we'll start with Animal House with John Belushi. The great, fun movie. Love that movie. Great comedy classic from the 70's. If you've never seen Animal House, go see it. God love John Belushi. I wished he could have made a lot more movies. It's a shame what happened to him. But yeah, that was from the great summer of 1978. Another great movie that I absolutely love. And it's kind of funny because these movies feature Saturday Night Live actors. A lot of our summer blockbusters do, actually, through the years. But the other favorite movie from 1978, not my favorite, but one of my favorites, was Foul Play, starring the beautiful Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase from Saturday Night Live. This was Chevy at his best, I think. I know he was great in the Christmas movies, but he was just really kind of subdued and charming in this movie, and his chemistry with Goldie Hawn was just spot on. And the movie Foul Play actually, again, as a tribute to the old film noir movies of the 1940s, but it was in color, but it was kind of the thriller and comedy, and it just really works. And I love this movie. I can watch it over and over and over, and have, actually. And it came out in the summer of 78. I didn't see it till the summer of 79 on cable. Again, I missed so many movies. My movie theater experience is very limited. I have not gone to the movies a lot in my life, but I have, thank God for home theaters for cable like Showtime and HBO, and thank God that we can own our own copies, and now you can stream them. A lot of these movies you can go on Amazon Prime or one of those Apple movies, whatever. You can go stream them immediately if you want to go watch them. But Foul Play is just a great movie, and one of my favorites of the summer of 78. But the biggest film of 1978 came in the summer of 78, and it stars, yes, Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta. I'm talking about Grease, of course. If you know me, you know that's my favorite movie of all time. Well, the top three anyway. I have a few favorite movies of all time, but Grease is a sentimental favorite and probably my favorite. It's where I began my love of Olivia Newton-John, and I really wanted to see the movies as well. I wasn't a fan of Olivia Newton-John at that time. I wasn't not a fan, but I remember the commercials and really being excited about seeing it, and something about seeing her present herself in a new way was very exciting for everybody. Of course, Travolta was white hot at that time. It's funny, at the time of the filming of Grease in 1977, Olivia was the biggest star. She had already had several number one records and albums, and a hit TV special, and her record sales were kind of diminishing as the disco movement came on. She was an easy listening singer, but she was mostly seen as a pristine beauty that sang easy listening music, but she was very likable, and a lot of people didn't like her because of her softness. She wasn't a rock and roller. But Grease kind of, here she was in leather, and You're the One That I Want was the first release that presented an upbeat Olivia Newton-John in a different way, and it was massive, of course. Shot straight to number one on the charts, and that song being such a hit, and the whole Travolta fever at that point just knocked Grease out of the ballpark, and it was mega. They had a special, actually they did it with Foul Play too. They had a special on syndication called Grease Day USA they did that with Foul Play as well. It was a Paramount movie. It was a Paramount thing, but they had they filmed the whole premiere, and I think you can find that on YouTube. If you've never seen that's just a lot of fun to watch. But Grease just was the summer movie to see in 1978, and it had hit after hit after hit on the soundtracks. And made Olivia Newton-John, took her from being a successful pop singer to a superstar. And Travolta, again, had a huge hit, and again, a legendary huge hit. Movies that we watch to this day. But the thing that bugs me about the movie, it isn't the movie, it's the reaction in the last few years of the movie. Several things have come up. I don't know why they've been kind of ragging on Grease in the last few years, but they have. First of all, I don't understand why people like Stockard Channing's character more than Olivia's. That baffles me, because she's the bad girl. But Olivia's character's, it's a wonderful character, really is. She's a good girl. She's not judgmental. She's sweet. She's beautiful. I love Stockard Channing, by the way. No offense to Miss Channing, but Olivia is the star of the movie, and her character, like when everybody's ragging on Rizzo for being pregnant, Olivia's Sandy comes up to her and is really kind to her when everybody else is making fun of her. And I thought that was a nice moment. But the thing that bugs me about the movie is the perception that that Sandy became a slut to get John Travolta. No, she did not become a slut. She dresses provocatively, yes. But the whole conflict of the movie is Travolta meets her on the beach by himself, and he behaves as himself, the true Danny Zuko at the beach. He's not putting on, he is himself, which he's a nice boy, and he meets a nice girl, a very pretty girl, and he falls for her, and then they have to separate for the summer, and lo and behold, she transfers from Sydney, Australia to his school, Rydell High School, and he doesn't know it, but he goes back to being Danny Zuko, the T-Bird, and all the trappings of having to be cool and blah, blah, blah. And here comes unassuming Sandy, who's still carrying her love for John Travolta and really doesn't want to be in this school. She liked the last school she was at in Australia. They never explain why she transferred, actually in the movie. Maybe in the novel they did, but I thought it was cool that they made her Australian, because the original play, Sandy was Sandy Dombrowski, and she was an American girl. But for Olivia, they made her comfortable and allowed her to play an Australian, albeit from Sydney instead of Melbourne, where Olivia is actually from. But I don't think that matters. Maybe it does the Melbournians who are proud of their girl. I don't know. But the concept of Olivia becoming a slut to get Travolta is just wrong, I think. Have you even watched the movie? The whole thing is he can't act like himself in front of her because he's got to be cool around his friends, and she's not cool. So there's the conflict, and it just breaks her heart. That's where she sings Hopelessly Devoted. She doesn't give up on him when he does that. She's just heartbroken that he's such a jackass. And you can see the hurt on his face when he does that to her. Like, oh, God, what have I done? Because I can't be myself around this beautiful girl. And anyway, he's kind of sulky through the rest of the movie after that encounter at the pep session. Of course, she starts dating Tom Chisholm, played by Lorenzo Lamas, which that role was actually going to go to President Ford's son. Can't remember his name, but that was who they wanted to play Tom Chisholm. But they ended up going with Lorenzo Lamas, who is the son of Fernando Lamas and Esther Williams, who's a famous swimmer in the golden age of Hollywood in the movies. And he was a Hollywood kid, a Nepo baby, and he got the role, and he does well. They dyed his hair blonde, obviously. And, of course, later, Mr. Lamas was in Renegade, which was on syndicated TV years ago, where he played a tough guy, but that was I believe it was his first movie role. But Travolta sees her with this jock, and he decides to get into sports to impress her, because obviously he thought that's what she wants him to be. So he starts becoming a jock for her and tries every sport known to man. And that's a great series of scenes there in the movie that's endearing, where he plays basketball and he can't do it without getting mad. Tries wrestling and can't do that. And Coach Calhoun finally convincing him to do track, long distance running. So he kind of he starts doing that, and that's where he encounters Olivia, where she sees him doing track, and he falls down, and they ended up kind of mending fences and going out on a date. But then he goofs up again and tries to make out with her in the car, and there's a scene that's misunderstood. Oh, it's rapey, because he tries to make out with her in the car, which, that's just a guy thing, and guys do that to this day. It's not rapey. That's just being horny teenagers. That's just the way it is. This way woke society drives me up a wall. And that's number one that ticks me off. That's now offensive now. Get a life, is what I say. But she also knocks the crap out of him with that door. So he doesn't get nowhere with her. She gets away from him and gets mad. And, of course, they go through their series of fights through the movie, and, at the dance, whenever they arrange him to dance with Cha-Cha and knock her out of the picture, and it embarrasses her, and she runs home crying. But at the end, the scene that's so misunderstood, where Olivia's in the black leather. The thing of that scene is Travolta comes out in a Letterman's jacket. And that's kind of his, if there's good Sandy, bad Sandy, there's good Danny, bad Danny. This is his good Danny moment when he comes out in the Letterman's jacket. And he finally tells his friends, hey, you can't follow a leader forever. I'm doing this for Sandy. I love her. He's telling him this. He's fessing up. He's grown up. He's evolved as a character. And then, lo and behold, what did Sandy go do? She changed for him. Not her, what's in her heart, but she changed her look for him to get along in his world. That was a compromise, and that's how we all need to get along. That wasn't becoming a slut. She didn't jump him and have sex. In the movie that didn't happen. But she dressed provocatively to fit into his world, which was a big step for her, this shy girl doing this for him. He put the Letterman's jacket on for her. She did the black leather for him. But the lyrics to You're the One I Want, she's telling him how the hog ate the cabbage. She's telling him, you're the one that I want, but to my heart I must be true. You better shape up. Excuse me. So people don't pay attention to the lyric of that song, and it sheds new light into that scene. Plus, I think it was really creative, whether they did it on purpose, where he flings his Letterman jacket off and she flings her leather jacket off, and then they dance to You're the One That I Want. And I think that's just a great scene, and it's cute, and that's what made me an Olivia Newton-John fan. And man, she looks really good in that outfit. God love Olivia Newton-John. I'm still upset about her passing. I'll never get over it. Broke my heart in a million pieces, and I'm not even joking. Olivia was a great woman. But Grease is my all-time favorite movie, and I love Xanadu as well, which came out in the summer of 1980, so it gets a little bit of a nod in this podcast as well. It was not a summer blockbuster, but the soundtrack certainly was for Xanadu. It continued. Grease had how many hits off of it? Well, the soundtrack to Xanadu had 5 massive hits off of it. You had All Over the World and I'm Alive by ELO, and you had Magic, Xanadu, and Suddenly, her duet with Cliff Richard off. So it had over half the record was a hit, even though the movie was a flop. And Olivia met her future husband, Matt Lattanzi, on Xanadu, who was the father of her daughter, Chloe Lattanzi. And so Xanadu, although is a classic Hollywood flop, actually was life-changing for Olivia and started me on my musical love of Olivia Newton-John. Grease started it, actually. Xanadu cemented it. I became a huge Olivia fan after Xanadu. I took notice of Olivia with Grease, but Xanadu is what made me a fan. And I'm going to wrap this up. I'll be right back with my final words. I've enjoyed this a lot. I love talking about movies, obviously. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. But I'll be right back to wrap it up. I know I've missed quite a few movies that were wonderful, but maybe, like I said, I could do a sequel to this Son of Summer Blockbusters podcast or something. Summer Blockbusters to the Wrath of, I don't know. I really like talking about movies, and I hope this has been enjoyable and jogged your memory on a few movies. As much as I love music, I love movies, as you know. It's a big passion of mine. And my criteria for a good movie is it's entertaining and it's memorable. So, it's very simple. And some movies are just absolute magic, and the movies I've mentioned are. I love collecting movies. I don't like the streaming. I like having hard copies of my movies. Just something about it. It's kind of like having books to me. I'm enjoying the whole 4K restoration of movies. To me, restoring these movies and keeping them looking good is a great thing. And I'm glad a lot of my favorites are upgraded to the visuals, visually, and the sound, because that'll keep them alive and for future generations to discover, like I discovered the films of the years before I was born, in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, that have become my favorites. These movies are classics, and I hope you pass them along to your kids and you expose them to them, and I hope that they don't shoo them off as old and yuck, you know. I hope kids aren't like that. I know there are some, but I hope that kids, I know Grease still is loved by generation after generation. One day I wished I could own a theater and show old movies. That would be so cool. I want these films to be remembered and enjoyed, because, man, kids don't know what they're missing if they haven't. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up, and I will be back with another podcast soon, and I hope you've enjoyed talking about the summer movies. I hope I didn't bore you to death, and I'll be back later with another podcast. Thank you for listening. I'm Leonard Riggs, and this was my podcast, From My Head to Your Ears. Take care. God bless.
Bye.